So this is going to be a reaction video of a reaction video. It's kind of like that Bo Burnham special. He's got he's got a whole skit on that, and I'll share the link down below. You should watch it. But Michael Palmisano was reacting to that French avant-garde funk band. I'm not going to even try to say their name. But I like to watch his channel. If you haven't seen his channel, I'll put a link below. He's got great insight. You know, he's not just watching videos and making faces. He's a musician, and he also shares things that I often don't see. I'll be watching one of his videos, and he'll point out a specific part of the drums that I didn't specifically hear until he pointed it out. The other thing I like about Michael is that he's always positive. He's appreciating music. You know, anybody can hate music and not like something. It's harder to like things, and that's kind of the skill he'll show you, is how to appreciate and enjoy music more, which I think is a better way to spend your time. But anyways, he has this clip. He was watching it and breaking it down, and he has this clip I'll play here on what he finds to be the most fascinating thing.
The fact that each one of these dudes found another one of themselves to do this with is the best part of this band. One person could be crazy enough to do this. Two, and remember all of this, is absolutely insane. All right, hold on.
And that's something I don't think a lot of people talk about. And I think it's a very important part of every band. You know, it's almost like a Venn diagram. You know, you need the bandmates to overlap and to have a lot in common in the music they want to make. You know, if you have somebody that just wants to make 3-minute songs played the same way every night, and somebody that wants to improvise and jam for 20 minutes, like, that's not going to be a good band. And you've seen that in history. You know, the Stones started overlapping with the Chicago Blues. They all loved the blues. And of course, they all had their individual differences, which is what makes that band unique. You know, same thing with Pink Floyd. You know, Roger Waters and David Gilmour, you know, they were very different, but they had a big overlap in the band in the beginning. That's when they were making their best music. And then they grew apart, where Roger wanted more just lyrics and theatrics, and David still wanted the music and the soundscape to be important. And you see that at the end of that band's career, is that Roger's albums were very sparse and lyrical and theatrical, and David's were much more sonically pleasing. Or it's like the Grateful Dead, where all those guys had different backgrounds. You know, Jerry was into bluegrass and country, Phil was a classic player, Bob and Pigpen were into the blues, but they all kind of overlap playing that blended American music with psychedelic jams. Same thing with the Beatles. I watched that Let It Be documentary, and you see John and Paul and Ringo and George all working together. Maybe in that documentary you see George kind of floating away, but they worked really well together because they had that overlap of working towards the same thing. You know something nobody talks about with the Beatles? Everybody blames Yoko, but it's also weird that John thought it was okay to have his girlfriend sitting by his side in all the jam sessions. You know, it's like you should kind of know better as an adult. Or you could look at Fish. You know, all 4 of those guys are willing to go into a 20-minute jam not knowing where it's going. You know, if 2 of the guys just wanted to play songs perfectly, that band wouldn't work. You know, they all have a shared vision to go into that unpredictable space, and that's what makes them great. I think another thing that happens in bands is that instead of letting the band members all influence that circle, they start to worry about the popularity in the crowd and the audience and making hits. And then I think that disrupts everything. Rick Rubin talks about, like, the audience should come last. You can't make art for other people. You can only make art for yourself. And that band that Michael's reviewing, you know, like, they're not trying to make pop hits. You know, they became a viral sensation and great because they're doing truly what they want to do. They both want to make that music and are working hard and are both creating something special. So I think that's why some bands work really well and some don't. So I think it's a delicate balance. You know, you got to keep your individuality, but you also ideally want to be playing with people that want to play the same music as you. And it's like any long-term relationship. You know, as you change, you want that person to be able to change along with you and adapt to that environment, so it's not so rigid. Same thing with bands. You see them pull apart when they kind of lose that shared musical vision and they start wanting to play completely different music. Or there's other issues. So there's really two important things in a band. Number one, you gotta like your bandmates and enjoy spending time with them. And then two, ideally you want to play the same type of music. And that's actually a very rare thing to find. So that's why I found Michael's reaction both hilarious and very true. You know, if you can find somebody that wants to play the same type of music as you, it's a pretty special thing.